Imagine I locked you in a room and told you to learn astrophysics. No books, no internet, just effort. Would that work? Of course not. Even the greatest minds in history didn't just figure it out overnight. They dedicated their entire lives, usually to a single idea. Take Pythagoras. His famous theorem, the one that says a squared plus b squared equals c squared, wasn't some casual afternoon insight. It took generations of mathematicians in ancient Babylon, Egypt, and Greece experimenting with triangles, shadows, and studying proportions before it all clicked. Today, we teach that theorem to 10-year-olds in 5th grade geometry as if it's obvious. That's the power of accumulated knowledge. What once took lifetimes to uncover is now considered basic. You're not supposed to invent everything from scratch. Real progress comes from stealing knowledge, from books, from mentors, from feedback and mistakes. Improvement doesn't start from zero, rather, it starts on the backs of giants. Your brain has two systems. Daniel Kahneman, the author of Thinking Fast and Slow, calls them System 1, the subconscious mind, and System 2, the conscious mind. But we're just going to refer to them as your autopilot brain and your manual control brain. The manual brain is the one you're using when you learn something new. It's slow, effortful, and kind of annoying. But it's also where all your problem solving happens. The autopilot brain, on the other hand, is fast, instinctive, and effortless. It runs the stuff you don't have to think about anymore. So here's how it works. Your manual brain takes in new knowledge and processes it with effort. With enough time and practice, that knowledge becomes second nature, something your autopilot brain can use effortlessly, without conscious thought. But your manual brain has a limit. It can only juggle 3 to 5 things at a time. So once you've automated a task, once it's handed off to autopilot, your conscious brain moves on. And unless you feed it something new, you stop improving. Take driving. When you first start, your manual brain is overloaded. Let's identify the different tasks that need to be learned. 1. Look at the road. 2. Check the mirrors. 3. Read the signs. 4. Figure out what you're doing. And wait, which pedal is the brake again? But after a while, that all shifts to autopilot. You do it without thinking. It feels effortless. And that's why you don't really become a better driver after your first year. There's nothing new for your manual brain to process. You're just coasting. But take something like chess. You start by learning a new fundamental concept. Through practice, those are packaged up and handed off to your autopilot brain. But that's just the beginning. There are still many more skills to build, and so you do the same process. Take in new knowledge, turn it into learned skills, and feed them into your autopilot, one layer at a time. Even after you learn the basics, there's always more to improve. New tactics, new openings, new traps. And that's the loop. You steal new knowledge, your manual brain works through it, and then autopilot takes over. So if you're stuck, it's probably not because you're not trying hard enough. It's because you're not stealing enough. Your autopilot is running last year's playbook, and your manual brain has nothing new to chew on. Step 2. Balancing knowledge with practice. So knowledge is important, but how much time should you actually be spending gaining that knowledge versus applying it? Following Sweller's cognitive load theory, we can define obtaining knowledge as theory and real-world application of this knowledge as practice. And while the exact ratio can vary depending on the task, Ericsson's research on deliberate practice consistently shows that the most effective performers spend about 80 to 90% of their time practicing, backed by 10 to 20% of well-timed theory. Moreover, the quality of your theory time matters just as much as the quantity. Sweller suggests that theory should be introduced in small chunks, not broad overviews. It should be deep and specific, not scattered. Let's imagine 2 beginners trying to improve at tennis. Let's call them Specific and Brad Death. Both spend 1 hour learning theory and 5 hours practicing, a solid 20 to 80 distribution. Brad Death uses his theory hour to cover everything: forehands, backhands, serves, footwork, and doubles rotations. Then he jumps straight into matches, trying to apply all of it at once. Specific, in contrast, spends her theory hour learning just one thing: the forehand. In practice, she runs drills that focus only on that stroke. She also plays games, but with one clear goal: to focus on her forehand mechanics, not to win the match. Now ask yourself, if both players train like this for a year, who improves more? Brad covered more material, but his manual brain is overloaded. It can't juggle 5 different skills at once. Meanwhile, specific honed on just 3 core mechanics for forehand improvement. After enough focused reps, these movements become automatic. Her manual brain hands them off to autopilot, freeing up space to learn the next layer, like the backhand, with the same precision and feedback loop. Theory is a lot like catching water. Try to grab too much at once and most of it slips through your fingers. But if you scoop a small amount and use it right away, say to water your plants, it becomes useful. Once your hands are empty, then you go back for more. That's how theory works best. Small and immediately applied. The longer you wait to use it, the more it fades. Next, you need to find a way to measure your progress. Success is about how closely your practice matches the ideal form described by theory. The delta where you are and where you're trying to go is connected through feedback. Let's say you're doing everything right in theory. You've taken a small chunk of knowledge, like the forehand, and focused your practice on the 3 most important mechanics. But if you never check your execution, if you never verify whether your grip is actually correct or your swing path is actually clean, then you're just walking around blind. Improvement is a self-correcting mechanism. Every practice session should include a check-in through a coach, video replay, or side-by-side comparison. And this clarity is only possible because you implemented the previous steps correctly. By locking in on just one specific aspect of your game, it becomes obvious what needs to be checked. You're not overwhelmed trying to fix 18 different mistakes across your forehand, backhand, and serve. You're checking just 3 things, maybe even 1 if you break it down further. That's the advantage of focused practice. You know exactly what you're trying to improve, so now you can ask, am I actually doing this right? And here's the hard part. This process often feels like regression. You might have been hitting the ball over the net before, but with bad form. Now, as you try to implement proper mechanics, your shots might miss more often. That's normal. Feedback forces you to break down the status quo in order to rebuild it correctly. And that means, for a while, you'll feel like you're getting worse. But this is the discipline of real improvement, accepting short-term setbacks in exchange for long-term mastery. Step 3, you don't decide what to learn next, you discover it. One of the biggest questions people have is, how am I supposed to know what to learn next? The truth is, unless you have a coach guiding you every step of the way, you often can't. When you're early in your journey, everything above you looks like a blur. You can't distinguish skill levels or even recognize what makes one technique better than another. If I showed you 2 chess grandmasters or 2 professional tennis players, and you had no experience in those domains, you'd struggle to say who's better. And even if you could guess, you wouldn't know why. That's because from your current level, your perception is limited by your experience. This is what makes learning feel like walking through a fog of war, a term borrowed from military strategy, where parts of the battlefield are hidden until explored. You move forward not with full knowledge, but with partial visibility, making guesses, testing moves, and slowly you clear your mental map. Most of what productive learning happens in what Vygotsky calls the zone of proximal development, the space just beyond your current capabilities where tasks are challenging enough to stretch you, but not so hard that they get lost on you. And the only way that you're in this zone is by doing the work. As you push against your limits, you start to feel the boundaries of your current ability. Gaps reveal themselves, patterns emerge, and suddenly what was once invisible becomes obvious. You don't decide what to learn next, you discover it. Let's say you've been playing tennis for a while, you know how to rally, your forehand feels solid, and you've even started playing in some casual matches. One day you come up against a player who isn't hitting harder than you, but somehow they're always in the right place, they're just gliding. Then you remember something your coach said months ago, something you brushed off at the time. Let's focus on shot form first, movement will come later. A throwaway comment that now makes perfect sense. Your shots are consistent, your manual brain has handed them off to autopilot, freeing up space to notice what's missing. I'm hitting the ball clean, just never from the right position. So you start watching how pros move, studying footwork, court positioning, things you couldn't even process back when you were trying to get the ball over the net. You didn't choose to focus on movement, it revealed itself, the moment the fog was cleared. That's real learning. You don't decide what's next, you run into it. Improvement is like a loop, and every part of that loop matters. You steal knowledge from people who are in front of you. You practice deliberately, focusing on one thing at a time. You measure, correct, and adapt through feedback. And just when you think you've plateaued, you discover the next big thing, hiding at the edge of your ability.